You're listening to the Creative Impostor, episode 135. Welcome to the Creative Impostor. I'm Andrea Klunder. Let me tell you a Creative Impostor New Year's holiday story. It begins during that weird week between Christmas and New Year's, where nothing gets done, no one knows what day it is, and yet somehow you imagined getting caught up on all the things you didn't get to do yet this year. It's Monday, and I'm driving from Chicago to a small town in Wisconsin, not far over the state line. It's only 6 p.m., but it grows increasingly darker and more ominous to this self-diagnosed city girl. I'm on a call with my friend Julia, running my internal monologue past her. Thank you, Julia, as always, for indulging me. Here's the monologue. Why the hell am I driving to Wisconsin right now? What exactly do I hope to accomplish? Who do I think I am? Etc. Why indeed? Several months ago, I booked a personal retreat for myself at this vintage 1939 cottage on Airbnb. It was an idea born partially out of a feeling of stagnation, having not really traveled in ages due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and even more so out of a creative process that started way back in April of 2021. See, I'm taking a huge risk. It's not the same kind of risk I took when I moved from Michigan to the big city of Chicago out of college, or when I started auditioning for storefront theater productions around the city, or when I quit my full-time arts admin job to start my own yoga studio business, or even when I started this podcast. Or is it the same kind of risk? What feels different is that I'm telling you now, before it exists, before I even know exactly what it is. And the reason it's a risk to tell you is because I worry that I might not finish it. And by telling you, there are really two possible outcomes. Number one, accountability to finish gets baked into my process, and I am compelled to move forward even when I don't really feel like it. Or two, I do in fact abandon it somewhere in the murky middle and then feel embarrassed or ashamed or flaky or something because I already told you, and then, well, it doesn't happen. Don't get me wrong. Every year I get hundreds of creative ideas swirling around my brain, things I could do, stuff I could make, businesses I could start, old ideas that bubble up to the surface begging for attention now, new ideas drifting in from the ether and landing on my nose like a mysterious duck-down feather. Most of them I let settle to the recesses of my mind. Some I write down in a journal. Some are buried somewhere in my notes app. But this one feels personal and increasingly exigent. There's an SAT word for you. Okay. I've been a singer as long as I can remember. I have probably even said on this podcast before that my first solo I can remember was Tomorrow from the musical Annie, which I believe I sang for the mother-daughter banquet at my church. Possibly I was 4 years old. And definitely, while I was still in early elementary, I beat out some of the older kids in the church choir to play Jonah and to sing Jonah's solo from inside of a fiberglass whale. And yes, I somehow still remember the words to this song called Please Forgive. Lord of earth, Lord of heaven, I have walked in foolish ways. Answer with your tender mercy. As to you, this prayer I raise. Please forgive. Please forgive. Heavenly Father, please forgive. In your sight I am unworthy. Lord in heaven, please forgive. Throughout school, I was in choir, high school musical, drama club. I started college as a vocal music major and dropped that after 1 year, which is a story perhaps for another episode. I sang opera. I performed in the New York Fringe Festival in an anarchist techno-popera. Yes, you heard that correctly. Taught music sing-along classes for preschoolers at a place called Musical Magic in Chicago. And most recently, sang kirtan, sacred mantras, mostly Hindu, set to musical arrangements in a call and response style, both with a band called the Bhakti Caravan and in my Bhakti Vinyasa yoga classes. But for the past year plus, as a result of, call it the pandemic, call it shifts in my business, call it reading and listening to more and more content about cultural appropriation, call it just general overwhelm and fatigue, I wasn't feeling it. Singing, I mean. And I felt like a huge part of myself was missing because it's not just the music that was missing. Each of those iterations of my singing self brought with it a community: church, choir, college, theater, children, yoga and kirtan, a band, and I had a specific role or identity in each of those scenarios. And without that, I've been a little lost. So I reached out to a voice coach and musician extraordinaire, Davin Youngs. Now, if you are a devoted listener of The Creative Impostor, you've already heard me talk about this part back in episode 129, the whole point of The Creative Impostor, Time for a Shift. So I won't tell you that part again, but I will link it in the show notes, in the episode description in your app, and at thecreativeimpostor.com/135. And of course, you can meet Davin for yourself in episode 82, Command Your Voice, Find Freedom. But here's where I left off. One of the things Davin and I talked about a few weeks into our coaching relationship was what to sing. Okay, let me back up and break down a voice coaching session for you. When I was in high school and college, and even after, once I moved to Chicago and started auditioning again, a voice lesson meant showing up in a studio, my teacher at a piano, we sing some scales, and by we, I mean I, sing some scales, vocal warm-ups, maybe I do some breathing exercises, we work on technique of how the sound is being produced. Mostly in my experience, we measure that by how it sounds coming out of me: posture, head position, breath support, range, tonality, nasality, resonance. Then we work on repertoire, songs or arias that I will be using for specific purposes: singing in church, attending a competition, auditioning for a role in a production, playing a role in said production. Sometimes in a lesson, we break down the technique of how I'm approaching the sound in the song. Sometimes phrasing, how the notes fit together, or acting. Who are you singing to and why? Diction, especially when singing in another language, etc. So now, here I am, many, many years after my most recent voice lesson, with Davin via Zoom from my apartment, and I have no repertoire. I have no performance purpose or desired outcome or goal. I have not even a style or genre or reason to be singing at all. I want my voice to sound and feel better, sure. So we start there. Yes, based on how it sounds, but with more of a functional approach to how it feels. And we do a lot more talking than I'm used to in voice lessons, with some coaching and teaching around why things are or aren't happening in a particular way. We identify and unravel unuseful habits that have built up over time. We talk, we sing exercises, we talk some more, we sing some more, and my voice starts to sound better and come with more ease and flexibility and flow. And then after a few weeks, Davin says, "Let's work on some songs. What would you like to sing?" And I freeze, like a deer in headlights. What would I like to sing indeed? Have you met my friend Bree? Bree Seeley. It's been a while, but she was featured on my other podcast, Podcast Envy, way back in 2018, talking about podcasting and imposter syndrome. Don't worry, I'll link it in the episode show notes for you so you can easily find it. And then later, I was on her show, The Success Diaries, to discuss my evolving relationship with the word success. I'll link that one too. In short, Bree and I have been fans of each other's work for a while now. But why am I telling you this? Because right now, Bree is getting ready to start her Quantum Immersion 90-day Accelerator program to help you take the next step in your creative business growth. And when I say next step, with Bree, I mean giant leap. She only runs this program a few times a year, and the next one begins February 2022. And hey, if you're listening to this later than that, no worries. Click the link in the show notes anyway to find out when it'll come around again. The link is breesealy.com/creative. And I'm thinking this may be just the thing you need if you are a service-based entrepreneur who has been defining success on your own terms, and you are ready for that next big leap in your business, but you could really use some customized support and accountability. Love that word, accountability, to get over that hurdle. Bree has more than 15 years experience as both an entrepreneur and coach. She's won a ton of awards, and most importantly, she is very personally committed to the success of her clients. The Quantum Immersion Accelerator combines custom strategy plus massive action plus accountability, there's that word again, with both one-on-one and group sessions, and is limited to about 12 to 15 members. I could give you more details, but I think it's better if you get it straight from Bree at breesealy.com/creative. That's my custom link because, if you haven't already guessed, I'm an affiliate for Bree's program, which means I agreed to help spread the word to people that I know in my personal network in exchange for a financial thank you for the introduction when you sign up. Believe me, I wouldn't agree to do that if I didn't think that this was a win-win-win opportunity for all of us. Plus, I secretly want to hear about your experience. So when you sign up, be sure to let me know, and I will book a session with you for after your 90 days to debrief and possibly feature you on a future episode of The Creative Impostor. The link again is at breesealy.com/creative, and if you want to see what other creative business and podcasting resources I'm recommending these days, check out thecreativeimpostor.com/faves for some of my favorites. And now, back to my huge risk. And in the form of a hint, let me read you the following excerpt from a book I just checked out of the library. The truth is that as I got older, the answer to, "What do you want to be?" became much more difficult to say out loud. Even though I always had a pretty good idea that I wanted to write poems and songs and play music, I always had a hard time telling people that I wanted to be a poet or a songwriter or an artist. It still feels wrong sometimes to label myself as something so grand in my estimation. Why? Is it false modesty? I doubt it. My ego seems sturdy enough these days to tolerate some aggrandizement. I think the disconnect is more related to the idea of being anything, when it's the doing that's most rewarding. Being something isn't real in the same way that doing something can be real. Everyone has a different idea of a songwriter. We all picture that differently. Your songwriter wears a beret, doesn't she? I knew it. If you can pull off a beret, you can definitely write songs. Anyway, my songwriter doesn't wear a beret or really think of himself as a songwriter at all, unless he's writing a song. That's another main reason I wanted the focus on one song to be reflected in the title of this book. When you're in the act of creating, when you're actually focused on that one song, and that focus is allowing you to disappear, which we've already established as ideal and to be desired, there isn't anyone else's image of who you are to compete with. In fact, even the image you have of yourself can take a breather. That excerpt is from the book How to Write One Song by Jeff Tweedy of the band Wilco and many other amazing accomplishments. Shout out to Jen Eads, singer-songwriter, podcaster extraordinaire, for making that recommendation to me. So, did you figure it out? The risk that I'm taking? I have always been a singer. I have never been a songwriter. I told you how my vocal coach Davin asked me what I wanted to sing beyond scales and vocal exercises, and I drew a complete blank. I mean, nothing felt right. I couldn't see myself returning to classical or opera, though I did pull out a piece by Henry Purcell and one by Menotti that I had always wanted to sing but got assigned other stuff by my teachers instead. When I am late I revisited some old musical theater rep. For still I still believe you will return. I know you will. My heart forevermore holds still. I've been sitting on my hands with kirtan and mantras. I've even completely stopped teaching yoga and practicing only occasionally due to this growing uncertainty about being a white person in the United States singing Hindu mantras with other mostly white people in the United States. Shiva, 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 Shambho. Shiva, 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 Shambho. Mahadeva, Shambho. Mahadeva, Shambho. And joining a choir? I mean, we're still in COVID. No. So what did that leave? Covering pop songs at an open mic? I don't really play any instruments like guitar or piano. I mean, I kind of play harmonium, which sounds like this. I learned the basics of chord progressions on harmonium for an early iteration of a kirtan band, as it's largely associated with Indian music. But A, I am by no means what I would consider to be skillful at playing it, and B, I feel like it would be totally weird to show up at an open mic with a harmonium and sing, like, I don't know, name your favorite pop song. So what's left? Had I ever written something? You mean like a song? I mean, I had come up with melodies and chord progressions for kirtan, like the words are ancient mantras, so I didn't really have to worry about that part. And they were mostly repetitive, 3 or 4 chords at most. So yeah. And there was this one Shiva mantra that I added a few English words to. Om Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shivaya. Om Shivaya. Shivaya. Om Shivaya. Take away my anger. Shivaya. Om Shivaya. And clear the way for light. Shivaya. Om Shivaya. Take away my deepest fears. Shivaya. Om Shivaya. And clear the way for love. Shivaya. Om Shivaya. But I'm not really a songwriter. Again, I barely play any instruments. Music theory class, learning chord progressions, key signatures, time signatures, notation. I still have trauma from that experience in college, and I don't know if it was the content or the fact that it was an 8 a.m. killer designed to weed people out. And lyrics? What do I even have to write about? And yet, if I'm honest, haven't I always wanted to create something of my own? If you've been listening to The Creative Impostor for a while, you know what comes next. The delusion of self-doubt and that chorus of imposter voices ringing in my ears nearly nonstop ever since Davin dropped that deceptively simple question into my hands. What do you want to sing? So what of my personal songwriting and recording Wisconsin Cottage Airbnb retreat? Next time on The Creative Impostor. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz. Our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. I thank you so much for listening, and this week, I ask you the same thing that Jeff Tweedy asked. Are you focused on the idea of being, or are you focused on the doing?